Huddersfield Town. The most famous goal of Chris Billy's life.
Is this the moment for Lee Fowler? It is. Take your place in Division 2, Huddersfield Town.
And Steve Simonson's boots now. He's missed. Steve Simonson clears the frame of the goal and collapses in a heap of tears. Huddersfield Town are promoted.
Mustafa Schindler has a chance to write his name in Huddersfield Town legend. And he takes that chance!
Hello and welcome to episode 115 of the Andy Takes That Chance podcast. This past week, chairman and owner Phil Hodgkinson made a triumphant return to the airwaves via Radio Leeds. We'll discuss the main talking points from that interview conducted by Catherine Hanna and Stephen Chicken. Later, Town visited the Potteries looking to make it 4 wins in a row, but fell to defeat after a winning goal by Johan Cruyff. Town were denied 3 points, but in this episode, we have 3 gents ready to run the rule over the game in the previous week. Not in the potting shed or sauna, it's Dan Porritt. And with the shaggy dark mop, it's Harry Potter, aka Simon Copland. And I'm your host, the crackpot, Matt Shaw. How are we doing, guys?
Very well, thanks, Matt.
Good. Okay, so speaking of pots, if you've got any, you should fill it with beer from the wonderful Magic Rock Brewing. Magic Rock sponsored this fine podcast and is a great place for all of your pre- and post-match get-togethers. So selling some of the finest thirst quenchers known to man and woman. Also, if you want to buy online, our code is AHTTC10, and that will give you 10% off at magicrockbrewing.com. So thank you again to Magic Rock and Richard and co for sponsoring the podcast. So, okay, guys, let's get going with the game first of all. I think Stoke City 2, Huddersfield Town 1. A couple of surprises with the lineup to Town fans, with Sinani and Colwell on the bench, first of all. Craig Holroyd got in touch with us and he said didn't get Colwell on the bench due to international duty. He didn't play, did he? Pozza, you went to the game. You know, this is going to be the joke this year, isn't it? Pozza's always at the game this season.
No one else is.
Yeah, you went down to the car park in Stoke. And were you surprised with the team sheet, or did it make sense to you?
No, a little bit surprised, to be fair. I thought Colwell and both Colwell and Solani have both impressed from what I've seen so far. I appreciate they have been off on international duty, but I think at Town we've not really got that luxury of being able to drop players just because they've been away to play internationally. Other teams can. Certainly Premier League teams, it seems to be a habit that, players go away and they rotate the squad and stuff like that. But I was quite surprised that they didn't both start. But that's up to Carlos. He obviously sees the players when they come back, if there's, they might be tired, if they're travelling, or, even if they've not played. We might have been working on stuff whilst they've not been here, just because we haven't had matches. I'm presuming we still train, so we've probably trained as they're not going to be there. So yeah, it were a little bit disappointing really to see him not playing. But Naby Sarr's come in and Holmes have come in, and they've, I suppose, not really impressed massively. Didn't make any difference really. You'd expect them both to want to come in and stake a claim for a first team spot. Neither really did much to make me think that they'll be starting on Wednesday, when we play at Blackpool. Is it Tuesday or Wednesday? I can't remember. Anyway, what I'd have probably done is I'd have probably seen Stoke as probably a more tricky game. So I'd have probably started them on Saturday and then maybe rested them midweek and seen if we could get some out of Stoke on paper. Blackpool, you'd expect us to go there and take something from that game, although on Saturday I think they beat Fulham, so maybe it'd be a little bit tougher than we thought. Hopefully that's their little first win and it's out of the system now, because if not it tends to be Town, doesn't it, that sort of falls for them record breakers. I was a little bit surprised, to be fair. I think we could have played certainly Sinani going forward. I think he offers so much more than Holmes, and we might have got a little bit of joy going forward. I'd say overall, not a bad performance, but certainly not a great one. If I were marking it out of 10, 6 out of 10. Like I say, going forward, especially centrally, we were lacking this week. Campbell, as energetic as he is and as enthusiastic he is to sort of chase stuff down, he's not ever filled me with confidence that he's
There's a couple of times where he turned in the middle and then he chose to run with it rather than playing someone out wide, which was. And Josh Caroma was off the boil a little bit as well. But I just wanted to sort of touch on the starting lineup. I do get the Sinani one because Sinani, last year I think everyone was quite critical about the injuries that Town picked up and the fact that Carlos was constantly overplaying players going into December. And I know it's only September and we're 5 games in, but Sinani's barely played, as he over sort of not really played a lot of friendlies, I don't think, over the summer. And then all of a sudden he's played a couple of games for Town and then he played 90 minutes, 45 in a week for Luxembourg. So I think they probably looked at that and thought, you know what? You add in the flights and apparently flying as well increases the risk of injury as well. They've probably looked at him and gone, you know what, maybe see how he gets on for Tuesday. I think it's Tuesday. We play Blackpool. You put doubts in my head now, Poz. But Colwell for me would have probably started. He's not played for England on the under-21. So for me he'd have probably been in. And I do appreciate the point that he they do work on things, don't they, while the guys out there. So it makes sense. And Carlos said similar afterwards. But I think you look at the lineup and it's probably easy now to point fingers and go, oh, you should have played him. You should have played him. It's what we do, isn't it? But in hindsight, would they made?
Nobody's bothered. It don't make
exactly.
Any difference.
So
it's a great decision.
Exactly. So I might have started Colwell, but I kind of got where he was coming from, Carlos. So I'm not going to. I think the long way around I'm going about that is I'm probably not going to point fingers at him and say you should have done this. But I understood why he did it. So fair enough. Simon, we made a great start. First 5 or 10 minutes, Town were absolutely flying, weren't they, Poz? And then from watching on, it looked like Stoke kind of not worked us out as such, but they started to press higher up the pitch, and that forced us into a little bit more difficulty in possession. And I felt sort of after the first 10, 15 minutes in particular, Stoke became happier with the ball than what we were. And we were a little bit messier. And I like stats, don't you guys? So I've one thing that will always stand out, and I think it surprises everybody when they first get into stats and they look at passing accuracy, and everyone looks at it and goes, why is that centre back top of the passing accuracy stats? And centre backs are usually top because they just knock the ball to the full back and to the side. Yeah, exactly. But when you look at the passing stats from Saturday, Matty Pearson's got 58.1%, which is really low for a centre back. Tom Lee's 67.9 and Naby Sarr 71.4. That's the lowest that they've had, the centre backs have had throughout the season. And I think that's to give credit to Stoke as well. Their pressing from the top was decent through Brown. And I think some of the goal kick routines we had were a little bit convoluted. 1 or 2 were quite nice and got us in. But I would say that's probably where Stoke started to turn the game, guys, was they pressed higher up the pitch. And what did you make of that, Simon, sort of Town's performance from what you've seen?
Yeah, I think there's similarities from what have been so far this season in that from set pieces, we look particularly dangerous. Kind of Sorba Thomas's delivery obviously is heads and shoulders above what we've had in kind of the previous 2-3 seasons. And there's a couple of chances, wasn't in the first half, kind of set piece that kind of missed. And then also kind of a second kind of corner whereby almost hits Naby Sarr and kind of goes over the bar kind of after the first flick on with a couple of the players behind him and who were arguably in a better position to finish that chance. And we continue to look threatening from set pieces, but in open play do probably look like we're lacking that kind of killer end product. Certainly through the middle, as you mentioned, whether it be Fraser Campbell, Danny Ward up top, feels like quite a similar kind of lack of end result or end product there. But yeah, it kind of echoed what you're saying, Matt, really, in that kind of from what I watched, kind of not in the stadium, but on TV, kind of felt like that kind of the first 10, 15 minutes aside, Stoke then kind of grew into the game. But we obviously then kind of come half time and kind of come after that, we got ourselves ahead.
Poz, I think Simon's right with what he said there. There's the 2 chances. Despite Stoke looking more comfortable on the ball than us, we actually created the better chances throughout the game, I thought. Vrancic was excellent for Stoke and he was probably deservedly man of the match, wasn't he? But you look at the chances. Stoke you know, there's Matty Pearson's header, which is just past the post. Naby Sarr is just slightly behind Naby Sarr, so he gets under it. You know, when you watch it back, it's unfortunate. And if he goes ahead even more, there's Tom Lees is behind him, ready to tap it in as well. So that was unfortunate. And then the second half, you have Sorba Thomas lines up the free kick. It's probably not his best delivery, to be fair, and the goalkeeper just kicks it back out. And he's decent, he's Bursic, but he made a mistake in kicking it back out and a little scramble. And there we are with, I've got this, hang on, wait for my Italian. We've got La Volpe dentro l'area di rigore, which is the fox in the box, Harry Toffolo, you know, there. And it's shades of the goal against Swansea City last year where he turns it in, which it's nice to see Harry Toffolo back on the score sheet, wasn't it? And at that point, Poz, I was sat there quite happy, but what I want to but the next 15 minutes really sort of annoyed me, and it shouldn't really, because, you know, 5-6 games in the season, and I don't have massive expectations that we're going to go to Stoke and win every game, but I think I've still got PTSD from last season's frailties in some way, you know, from losing from winning positions, you know, the individual errors that we were making last year at Stoke was, you know, Joel Pereira show, wasn't it? That was really frustrating, and Matty Pearson's own goal was similar to Stearman's there last year as well, you know, with the sort of inexplicable nature of it. Naby Sarr's put his hands up for the first goal and said, I should have been marking Jacob Brown. And I think that's big of Naby to do, you know, fair play to Naby for doing that, because everyone was looking at Lewis O'Brien, wasn't it, going, why is he not jumped? And it's because it was Naby's man. So I'm not going to slate anyone. And the second one, it could have been cut out by a couple of people. I can see the guys run through. Naby's left trailing water a little bit, isn't he? And Lewis doesn't quite get the block, and Harry Toffolo's the wrong side. He's sort of not goal side. And at Poz, as you know from playing, you know, if you're not goal side, then you put your leg across, and the guy's going to go over for a penalty. So Harry Toffolo's kind of out of that there. Whereas the ball comes across, and there's absolutely nobody really anywhere near Matty Pearson, and he's gone full Holland 1974 and Cruyffed it into the.
I've also watched it back 5 or 6 times. Obviously, I used to play defence, so I'm trying to put myself in his shoes, and
he just got his body in the wrong sort of shape, didn't he? I think.
Yeah, I can't see what he's trying to do there. It almost looks like he's trying to get it under control and turn back towards his own goal, and it just kind of goes horribly wrong. Now, it's a little bit difficult to tell, obviously, on replays and stuff like that, but I don't know if the spin of the ball or the bobble or something that just takes it off course at last minute, but really bizarre own goal to sort of concede. And
what's annoying from that point, though, Poz, is that it's like the Championship giveth and taketh away, do you know? Because we've been so unlucky the last year, and then all of a sudden we get this stroke of luck against Preston, whereby we win the game without a shot on target. At this point, Stoke had 1 shot on target, which was the goal, and the 2-1 up, you know. So it's like the Championship's leveled that out straight away, and apparently they had 2 on target, you know. But I thought that Fletcher one was going wide, so I'm not going to count that. But
yeah, it was funny, like you said before, you know, first half we started well, and they figured us out. But sitting in the stadium, certainly away, sometimes you get that building feeling, don't you? That now
I got that. Yeah, I got that the Euros final.
Never really felt that though. You know, there were a couple of balls in that sort of flashed across goal, but we seemed to deal with them quite well. They were quite. I don't know who plays left wing for Stoke, but they sort of didn't really seem to like him at first, because no one ever passed to him.
They cheered, didn't they, when he got it?
When he went out there, and they'd scored a goal, and I thought, hang on a minute, what's going on here? And he put a couple of decent balls in, but we dealt with it well, and it got to half time, and I were more than happy at 0-0. We'd not created much organic pieces. But I think that's one of the strengths this season. We're going to have to play to that, and it's actually quite nice. I think it's first time in many a year that we've been able to, get a corner, and you think, do you know what, we might get a goal here. And you centre halves as well. You're trotting forward, and if you know there's a decent ball coming in and you've got a chance of a goal, it just gives you that extra spring in your step, rather than thinking, why am I making 60 yards up here for a crap ball to come in, only to make 60 yards back? So, it were that air of anticipation. You felt it within the crowd when we got a set piece that we could make something happen. And obviously, Toffolo sort of scuffs one in, and it's 1-0. And it's the old thing in football, isn't it, that when you've scored a goal, next 10 minutes are really, really important. And to concede from a set piece, were really disappointing. When we were, when you sat there, it did look like Lewis O'Brien's just let his man get a run on him and a jump. But, like I say, fair play to Naby to put his hands up. But one of the main things that disappointed me really were, I won't say the reaction after the second went in and we didn't really create up because we were trying. We just lacked a little bit of quality, and that were quite frustrating. There were balls through for players to run onto that were just a little bit too straight or a little bit over hit, and you're looking at the players that are sort of playing the balls through, and there's only sort of a finite gap to get that ball through, and you get the impression that the aim was to get the ball through the gap rather than to the man, if that makes sense.
We gave the ball away a lot, didn't we?
Hard to make it accurate rather than being able to judge the weight and the accuracy. It was the power over, all else to get it there.
I was speaking to a few people afterwards, Pozza, and they were sort of a bit critical of Lewis O'Brien and Jonathan Hogg. And I did notice Jonathan Hogg hit a lot of wayward ones as we were trying to chase the game. But I agree with you. Stoke's shape was very good. I think you've got to give credit to Stoke. I think both teams made themselves difficult to beat, in terms of shape. It's just Town have made more individual errors on the day, which has cost us. But I think we come out with a game with a little bit of credit as well, to be honest. I think we've gone there against Stoke, who are a good side, I think. I think they've got good players, they've got good shape about them, a good coach. And I think they'll be up in the top sort of 6 or 8, I think, at the end of the season. I think we can look back on that and say, okay, we've lost the game. But there are aspects of that game, how difficult we made and how little Stoke created on the day, that really sort of stand us in good stead. As long as we don't lose confidence from the performance, confidence from the result, the performance was actually fairly decent, if not entertaining. And it certainly rustled a couple of the Stoke fans as well. I never noticed this time-wasting thing. They're going on about Lee Nichols all the time, and I'd never really noticed it. And the first time I noticed it was when Dwayne Holmes was drying a ball to throw in. Dwayne, the smallest man, trying to launch the ball to throw us. And they were kicking off at him, and he was turning around having a little chat with them, and as Dwayne does. But yeah, I never really noticed that. But it was, I think we come out of the game. It's disappointing. I was really disappointed for an hour or so after the game because I felt like we'd thrown away a result, and it just felt a bit like last season's failings. But when I've reflected on it a bit more, I think we come out of the game with a bit more credit than what we would have done last year in terms of the way that we dealt with Stoke. And I think there's definite positives, and just trying to get my head around the result because I didn't think we deserved to lose that game.
Yeah, I think this season's going to be one of them where we'll win 2 or 3 and then we'll lose 2 or 3. It won't be a case of we're turning up and going to win. I think the way that we play, the style of football that we play, relies on players being in form. Like I was saying earlier, the front, we'll call it a front 4 when you include your central striker. It sounds weird to say after we've just scored 4, but I do think that is a really an area where we're lacking. Centrally, hopefully Meepo can come in. He looks quite lively when he came on.
What did you make of him, really? I couldn't remember him doing anything apart from the sort of miscontrol-ish that, he kind of jumped at him a bit, didn't he, in the box. But when I've looked back, he's 100% pass rate after a couple of passes, and he looked sharp.
If you're watching on TV, because obviously the camera's focusing on ball, but to me, he looked, obviously behind the goal, you're looking through the play. So
he looked like he was the type to try get behind rather than come
100%, mate. He must have made 2 or 3 sort of runs across and then in. Now obviously he's new, so it won't have worked with as much. But I was sort of saying afterwards, if we can get Sanani or maybe Vallejo in who can pick a pass a little bit better than what we had on Saturday, then that's a different option. Because as good as we are going wide, Sorba Thomas he's had an absolutely amazing start. I don't want to criticise the lad at all, but
4 key passes again on the weekend.
Yeah, he didn't play bad at all. But people have got to remember he's literally just stepped up from non-league football, and he's started really, really well. But he's not great enough quality to just win games. There were people around me, give it to Thomas, give it to Thomas, give it to Thomas. Like he's the next Ronaldo, and he can.
He is exciting though, isn't he? It does excite you.
But what the point I'm trying to make is
pressure's probably not.
He's not able to do that all the time because he's still learning Championship football. He's come from non-league. He's not a world beater as yet, and he's not going to be a player where every single game is going to be as good.
Well,
as
look at Josh Koroma as well.
He played well. Don't get me wrong, he played well. Yeah. But he's not that reliable as yet. And the same side on the other side, you had Koroma.
He's going through the other spell, isn't he? Yeah. So he's going through the other spell. Yeah.
He's the opposite. Yeah. He's on a downward, and there were a couple of times where it opened up and he probably should have had a shot.
He'll be back though, mate. The conch is still here. I still believe in Josh Koroma. The conch is ready. The conch is ready.
And players of that sort of position have peaks and troughs, and Koroma, I thought after Sheffield United when he got his when he got his goal, that might give him a little boost of confidence. But he was
good against Reading.
Yeah, he did well against Reading. It just didn't seem the Josh Koroma.
He's not quite. I think he had a few COVID issues, didn't he, pre-season? So I don't think he's fully there yet, is he? So I don't think he's 100%. I believe in Josh Koroma as a player, though. I think he'll be back and firing at some point. I think sometimes players just need to play through.
With the winger, like you say, you just need to get that assist. You just need to get that goal.
Yeah, and I think he'll play through it. Just let him play through the spells. I think he's good enough to do that. So I think at the end of the day, Simon, heads up really to Matty Pearson, Naby Sarr. I think a bit of bad luck. On this occasion, I think overall quite solid. Stoke looks quite solid to me. Probably not the most exciting and enthralling game for neutrals, but would you say a fair result? Or do you I think Town deserved a draw, but from your perspective, how would you see the end result, really?
Yeah, I think probably a draw would have been a fair result. I think
0-0 was probably the right result, because I think, to be fair, our goal was a bit scrappy. I think from their point of view, they'll be looking at that going, we shouldn't have let that goal in. Everyone does that, though, don't they?
I think what I quite liked about our goal is that we're committing men in the box. In the past, I've been critical of not putting enough bodies in and around the box and kind of being there for those rebounds and ricochets. And actually, it was nice to see some people there to pick up on the rebound off a goalkeeper and that sort of thing. And sometimes you create your own luck, don't you, by doing such things. So in that respect, I was pleased with that. I think that the second goal we conceded is particularly soft, actually. I know what you talked about, Matt, in terms of body shape and kind of dangling out leg and penalties and such, but the guy shouldn't be able to weave between three.
Get
his ball into the box. We need to be better at that, I do think. And in that sense, disappointing and a draw probably would have been a fair result. But I don't think we come out of it with any particular concerns or anything looking ahead. I think it's important we just put it behind us now. For me, I think Stoke will be in the playoffs this year. I think they've got a good squad, actually, got quite good strength in depth. Not overly concerned of the tension.
The little bit of disappointment for me were probably right at the end. We had 5 minutes added time, and it was, we were still trying to sort of play out from back. And I get that's the style, and that's how it is. But to me, and I've said it many times on here, and I'll continue to say it. And
get it forward. Is that what you're going to say?
Get it forward. Yeah, no, 100%, Matt. Naby Sarr is massive. Matty Pearce, both good in air. Just stick them up top for 5 minutes. And I was talking afterwards to somebody as we were walking out, and there's teams that can continue to play in such a way in the last 5 minutes because they know that they can carve out a chance, like your Man Cities, your Barcelonas. They can continue to play that way because they will get a chance. Whereas Town, it all gets a little bit desperate and passes go wayward and stuff. And like I say, just bang Naby Sarr in area and just knock it long to him, because it causes just chaos. I think he went up there literally for the last sort of long ball, and that's when we had the chance. So you're thinking if you'd have done that 10 minutes earlier, you never know. You might lose 3-1, but you might draw 2-2.
Worth the risk.
If I were going to be heavily critical towards Carlos, that's probably my only criticism. I guess it's a fine line of, if we commit that too early, then we go 3-1 down and we might have got a goal playing as we normally play. But Stoke had that big fella at back. He must have been sort of 6'6", and if Naby Sarr goes up, it takes him out of the game almost, because he will just man mark Sarr. And even if Sarr just pulls away and don't get involved, it takes him out, and you might get a ricochet and stuff like that. But yeah, I'd agree with Sarr. Draw would have been a fair result there for me.
The only thing for me is I'd like to have seen Mipo been introduced a little bit sooner. It felt like he kind of waited a little while to make that substitution.
Yeah.
For me right now, I won't claim to know kind of what his strengths are, how good he is. Very much an unknown quantity, but probably comes with a little bit of hype. Having played for Man City, Man United, West Ham, and actually, should we have thrown him on straight after the Stoke goal? That's probably what I would have done.
I think Campbell was flagging. I think one thing I did, I felt Turton was a bit of a wasted sub. He did all right when he came on, to be fair to him, but I just thought it went back forward into Carlos. But I thought the way the game was panning out, I thought Alex Vaiko as that man in midfield to hit those accurate passes. And I know he's got his own weaknesses, hasn't he? Especially in the two with being turned and whatnot. But I just felt Hogg and O'Brien were struggling to penetrate those passes through the middle, which they were trying to do. And Alex Verco's your man for that, really, isn't he? And I think that's the only thing I would maybe think we got particularly not wrong, because, it's just an opinion, isn't it? But that was probably something I would have maybe thought about rather than putting, Ollie Turton on it. But I understood why he did it, but Matty Pearson can play right back, can't he? So I would have probably just gone that way and kept Tom Lees on. Thought Tom Lees was good again, by the way.
Yeah, looks good asset so far.
Yeah, I like him. I think the back three works well, the 3-4-3. But I do think if you're going to attempt to maybe play out from the back, that's not the way. That's not the three that you need, because you've got Pearson and Lees, who are probably old school inverted commas, and then you've got Nabisar, who 1 minute, like we've said on here many times, looks like, 1 minute he looks brilliant, and next minute your heart's in your throat because
Gordon Tuxar,
he looks like he's going to fall over. And I think that comes back to you made the point about Nichols and the sort of alleged time wasting. I think it was
his distribution wasn't very good, to be honest. I thought
there's confidence. He struggled a bit on Saturday.
Yeah, but I just chalk that down as a one-off because he's been pretty much spot on in every other game.
What I think the issue with that is, Matt, though, normally, and you'll know as a keeper, if you wanted to play out front back, obviously you've kind of got to get on with it quite quickly, haven't you? Stoke set up really well to stop that shot.
Yeah, the press tie.
The only option going long was to Fraser Campbell, who were being marked by that
6'7" Harry Suter. Yeah.
So we're never going to win the header. So I do understand why Nichols took his time, because he was probably caught in a catch-22. If I play it short, we're going to get pressed. If I go long, we're going to lose it.
There's two things. There's two things you can do. I think one thing is, if you're going to go long, you need to tell everyone to push up, because otherwise you're going to lose the second ball anyway. And that's what we were doing, losing that second ball. So your defence and your midfield need to push up to win it. And the other one is to go out wide. And he did go out wide quite a lot, but we weren't exactly. There was Dwayne on the right hand side, who's like 5'6".
Maybe Thomas and Karoma
Thomas,
for that ball.
A lot of them just sailed over. But what's really annoying, what's annoying for a goalkeeper, is when you ping that ball, you ping it with the intention for them to jump and flick. And what happens quite a lot is a defender will come into the back and he will just nudge the attack, and then obviously they won't jump or they'll mistime it, and then it goes out of play, and everyone looks at the goalkeeper, and the goalkeeper's like, well, it was perfect. It's just
if you
dealt with the defender. So I think that happened a fair bit. I'm gonna blame the attackers and defenders. That's what those goalkeepers are always doing it, Simon. So
I have to laugh there, because having played a little bit with and watched Matt play quite a bit, there's a couple of things there. One,
I was like Jose Luis Chilavert, mate. That was what Chilavert.
There was very little, or what I would describe as playing out from the back, and there was very little of pinging balls as well. It was kind of kick it as far as you can get it, almost sort of job, and see where it lands.
We had a routine with Graham and Craig, who played up front. People are going to find this really boring, but what they used to do is they used to do this thing where they would sprint back to the halfway line when I had it, and then turn and spin and run, because I could make it land on the edge of the other penalty box. So, every time we'd do this, and then I would play it to Craig on the inside left, and he would lob the keeper, because it would bounce once and it'd sit up and he'd lob it. And I got 13 assists one season just from that. It were amazing. But yeah, we'll move on from my.
You just showed
up from the back. No, that was like League 4 a heavy woolen. And as it got higher, that got significantly less, let me tell you. So we'll move on.
Five-a-side pitch.
Yeah. So let's move on from that. So I think what's interesting, there's three of us. We've had our say. So I think what we'll do is we'll roll in. I spoke to Ben from the YYY Files, the Stoke City podcast, and here's what Ben had to say on the game.
What on earth? We've lost to a club soil. We've literally lost to a club soil.
Hello, no one is available to take your call. Please leave a message after the tone.
Hey up, guys. Thank you for having me back, particularly in defeat. My thoughts on the game yesterday. Well, it was a bit rubbish, wasn't it, really? Neither side created very many chances, I thought, and to be honest, I'd struggled to pick much between them. The first half particularly, you had a good first 5 minutes. We had a really good chance when Tyrone put in a ball for Jacob Brown and he just couldn't quite get on the end of it. And beyond that, it was a bit of a midfield battle, really. The game slowed down slightly, but your goalkeeper, but we'll brush over that. And then the second half, obviously, was where it kicked off. I think throughout the entire game, your attacking impetus came through Sorba Thomas, who looked good, certainly your best player on the day. And I think it was him that caused the chaos for the free kick for your goal. Stoke are prone to switching off in certain periods, despite defending well, I thought, for the majority of the game. And it was just a silly way for us to concede. But then I think we showed good character by replying straight away. And it was the Mario Vrancic show after that, really. He put in the corner for Jacob Brown to head home. What a leap, by the way. And then, of course, it was Vrancic who set up your lad. And may I say, what an elegant back heel it was as well. Perhaps the best bit of skill of the entire game. Lovely finish. And then, aside from the final flourish that you showed at the end, I thought the game was relatively even. And a draw would have perhaps been fair, but maybe Stoke edged it in the end. And Vrancic was the difference maker. And I think, barring Thomas, that's what you're missing at the moment. But overall, the game, like I say, wasn't the most exciting game of the season. But from a Stoke point of view, the fact that we could not play our best football, and we're missing the likes of Tyrese Campbell, Abdallah Seamer's yet to play for us yet. Nick Powell wasn't playing yesterday. We've got some good players to come back in this team, and I think there's more to come from Stoke. And considering that we're third at the end of play today, I'm excited to see where we're going to go from here. Huddersfield, I think a lot of people had hope. Huddersfield down at the bottom of the table this year. I don't think that's going to happen. Don't get me wrong. I don't know whether I thought you were quite fortunate to end up in fourth at the end of the previous game. But I'd have said a mid-table finish is perfectly fine for you. Just make sure you keep hold of Sorba Thomas in the winter transfer window. Apart from that, best luck until we play you again. And yeah, thanks for having me.
There we go. That was Ben from the YYY Files. Fair enough, I thought, from a Stoke point of view. It's always interesting to hear from the other side, isn't it, Poz?
Yeah, pretty fair assessment there. Pretty much what we said too. I wouldn't say that Stoke were going to push for a promotion bid, though. From what I saw, they'll be sort of mid-table-ish. Although he did mention there's players to come back, so when they come back, maybe. But yeah,
meet again in the playoffs. We'll meet again in the playoffs at the end of the season.
Gap in my knowledge, Matt. Forgive me, a gap in my knowledge. Why the YYY Files?
YYY Delilah, isn't it? Yeah, I presume in a way. Right, cool. Let's go to the football forum. So after the game, we always push out, a tweet which asks for fans and their opinion on the game, and you guys usually come back at us in droves, which is great. So I've already had Craig's tweet in there about Levi Colwill, and we'll go to Nathan M. Nathan says, frustrating result. A draw would have been fair. That said, would have lost 3-0 last season and can't really complain when playing away at an informed side. Missed Colwill, O'Brien, Karoba were poor. Sorba still looking the business. Blackpool and Forest more important fixtures. So you guys can jump in whenever with any of this and just interject when you feel free. The Huddersfield Town family friendly Twitter group now. They've got a Facebook group which is decent if you want to join them. They say they didn't deserve to win but didn't deserve to lose. I don't think Josh Crome had his best game today. Looked a bit out of sorts for me. Not sure starting our 3 Prem loans on the bench helped, but can understand why. 2 of them certainly need to start at Blackpool now. It was a good test, though. Gamer James says, not a disastrous defeat. Tempers and warranted promotion talk. We are still ahead of the points total I thought we'd have at this point. Some winnable games coming up too, so all good. I'm getting worried about these winnable games. There's expectation levels going through Blackpool. That beating Fulham and Forest have to win, don't they, at some point? And otherwise, Chris Hughton's in for the old chop. So we'll see. But the last couple here. Richard Hookey says, you win some, you lose some. We move on to Blackpool. Still think we look good defensively considering the result. That's borne by the lack of shots on target Stoke had. A few attacking players need to start picking up a bit, though. Form, otherwise no issues. And Terry J says he agrees with that. So much is better than the start of the year. We look very competitive as a team in this division. And the last comment is from Jonathan Hodgson, who says, 2 solid, big and well-organised sides slugging it out. Should have been 1-1, save a free cone goal. Seriously, need to sort out this playing out from the back lark. And Ben Denby says, I feel like we've been asking that for some time. It's like poking the bear. So, the ginger bear. You, Poz, not Phil Hodgkinson, who we're going to come on to in a minute. What do you make of those? Fair assessments overall?
Yeah, I'd say so. I think the playing out from the back thing's always risky, and it seems to be the in thing at football to do that. And you see it down in sort of even lower leagues and even Sunday League football now. People trying to play that way. It takes time to filter through, doesn't it? Your top teams play it, and tactics sort of filter down. And sometimes you're asking players that aren't capable of doing it to do it. But on Saturday, it did work on a couple of occasions. But everything, I think, when you play like that, everything has to be so pre-planned. And if the opposition's set up in a way that stops you from doing that, it goes out of the window. So you've got to be able to think on your feet, and you've got to do something different. And I think that's probably where we struggled on Saturday. More than not being able to do it, I think Stoke set up to stop us doing it, and then we just couldn't think of another way around that. So we kind of didn't really we didn't knock it long, we didn't knock it wide. We just tried a bit of a combination of everything. And, fans were getting frustrated, certainly around near me, because you'd set up for the playing out from the back, and there'd be two passes, and then someone would just end up leathering it anyway. So you might as well just do that. From
the Wagner side used to have two. Used to play it from the back, didn't they? And then if anyone ever used to press high, so the centre backs would split and Hoggy would drop, didn't they? So they had the three, and then Moy just ahead, just in case they pushed too far, and you could clip it over. And then if they ever got pushed too high, what they would do is the fullbacks would push up, Tommy Smith and Lerver. And then Danny Ward would hit, or Lossell, whoever, would hit a diagonal to them. And then they would win the header and go down the line that way. And it just feels like maybe we've not got that second phase, yet. And maybe that's just what we're lacking is, if we're pushed high, don't some of the risk taking was really daft, I thought at the time. But, maybe it just needs a set plan where you just changed and then, hit that diagonal. But we'll move on now to...
I was just saying, Matt, I think for me, it's picking the right moments and the right times in a game to play out from the back. I think Poz made a good point earlier how kind of 85th, 86th minute when you're chasing the game and you've got options like putting your two centre-halves up top and hitting some long balls, that then feels like a better option. Similarly, certainly last season, there were a couple of occasions where we tried playing out from the back just before half-time and inevitably end up conceding kind of a really poor goal. And I think it's just kind of understanding where the momentum is in the game and where the opportunities are and kind of adapting accordingly rather than being so rigid to a game plan that you've kind of worked on in the week. So hopefully we'll see more of that for me going forward.
Let's move on. We've been talking about the Stoke game for a little while. So the other piece of news that we're going to talk about is Phil Hodgkinson. So Phil, I think he promised an interview, didn't he, during the transfer window, said he would speak, at the end of the window once it was all done. And as good as his word, he was here. So after the window had shut. So he mentioned quite a lot, really. It was quite a long and thorough interview. Fair play to Phil for doing that. And what we'll do is we'll break down a couple of things here and we'll just have a little discussion because some of these are quite interesting. Initially, he's mentioned the club have now rid themselves of. He didn't really want to say bad apples. He wanted to sort of move on and focus elsewhere. But it sounded like he's got everybody sort of pushing in the same direction now. Whereas before there were people maybe had their own agendas or had their own way of doing things, and he's got everybody sort of all in the same boat, all rowing the right way now, which sounds good. And he said he's got his. This is more like Huddersfield Town, I think, is what he said, didn't he? Which is really interesting, which is great. But the main thing they wanted to talk about, obviously, because there was interest from up the M62 as well, was Lewis O'Brien, and I think this is the first sort of major talking point we'll come to. Just my point of view on this was, I appreciate that Phil wants to be as upfront as possible, and he gave some really sort of interesting insight, didn't he, into the deal itself. I just felt a little bit uncomfortable about how much detail he did go into as well. I don't think we probably needed to know as much as maybe what it's probably an odd sort of an odd point that I'm trying to make here, but I just thought maybe it went a little bit too far, in giving some information. But it's, we appreciate what he said. We appreciate the information. Lewis, just to recap, the offer was around £13 million, but the tweet from Radio Leeds, I thought could have maybe been worded a little bit better because they didn't add the context around that, and it kind of invited a bit of a pile on from, those lot, who don't usually do context anyway.
The problem is that, man. I understand why journalists do that, but a lot of fans will just read that we've turned down 30 million
Exactly.
for Lewis O'Brien and not even read the rest of the interview. So straight away,
I thought they would know that though.
In and pelting him, and then all of a sudden you say, "Well, have you read it?" And then they read it and go, fair enough.
Yeah.
So
I thought it could have been
people before you bloody have a pop.
Yeah, I thought it could have been worded a bit better. I know sometimes it's impossible, isn't it, to word everything perfectly for everybody, but I just thought the tweet could have maybe been structured a bit.
It was just a bit of clickbait, really, wasn't it, more than else?
It felt a bit like that, yeah.
Fair enough.
But yeah, so they offered £30 million. The context was lost in the tweets, as we said, so the context was essentially there wasn't enough guaranteed cash within that 13 million, and Leeds were £1 million short of the guarantee. And Phil just felt that if you're not going to prepare to go £1 million when you're a Premier League club with all that money, then you can't want him that much. And that was essentially the gist of what he was trying to say. I've heard from a couple of, we all have our little sources here and there, don't we, of what's happening. And I've got one that's got a foot in the other camp. And let's just say a couple of those clauses that Leeds United had were perhaps, you could refer to them as fantasy clauses, to take it up to the 13 million. It's very much, Town weren't ever going to get 13 million unless aliens landed from the planet Zog and started to claim the Earth as, under the name of Marcelo Bielsa. There's all sorts of some fun and frolics
the
in there.
That I heard, Matt, were probably less likely than that to happen. And I won't say what it was. But,
yeah. It's so,
I think the thing for me as well that's perhaps not been spoken about is in between there being a lot of conversation or kind of noise around the Lewis O'Brien transfer and the end of the windows, Leeds United went out and did quite a big bit of business on Dan James that I think initially they weren't planning on doing. And they didn't, from what I read, they weren't looking to strengthen in those kind of forward positions. But Dan James obviously became available as a result of Ronaldo moving to United. And I think that perhaps then the kind of the appetite or the cash that they may not have come back with to offer for Lewis O'Brien was no longer there. So I think that was something that wasn't spoken around during the interview. And I think that's, from an outside looking in, could have been something that changed the direction of travel as well.
Possibly. I think the O'Brien thing was kind of rumbling all summer, though, wasn't it? Whereas that Ronaldo thing was kind of a flash sort of at the end, wasn't it? Which changed everything.
Exactly.
It probably altered the last week, didn't it, of what's going on there. But
you could have foreseen one scenario being that Leeds would have come back with an improved offer for O'Brien that had met kind of the criteria that Phil set. But as a result of parting with loads of cash for Dan James, they were no longer in a position to do that. So, just very much a possibility. I'm not saying that's true, but it wouldn't surprise me were that the case either.
Yes.
I think it were. I know you've gone, Matt. So I was just going to say, I know you've said it's probably a little bit too information. He's gone quite into detail there, but
I think some of that's good. But I think
sometimes that's what fans want, and
but is that a good thing?
What rumours are like? It's we've turned down 30 million for Lewis O'Brien. All of a sudden, everyone goes mental. He's actually explained as to why we've done that, and I think that's quite interesting to hear as a fan. I get what you're saying, and as another club that might look to do dealings with Town if stuff fall through, will they look at that and everything's going to come out in wash kind of thing? So he's kind of damned if he does and damned as he done on that particular one.
Yeah, it wasn't a particularly big complaint or anything. It was just a sort of an observation. Yeah, it was just an observation where you just think
probably because it's unheard of, though. You don't hear many chairmen going into that level of detail. So it's probably more of a, hang on a minute, are we doing something we shouldn't be, rather than
it was interesting. For sure, it was interesting and appreciated. It was just, you just think, well, I hope that doesn't affect other people wanting to talk to us if he's going to tell people of the deal. But a lot of transfers are covered by NDAs when they go through anyway. So and things like that, and undisclosed, and you're not supposed to tell. So I'm sure there are other little mitigating factors as well that'll happen down the line. But the positive thing that came out of it was that Lewis O'Brien's in contract talks now, which is very positive, because I was sort of saying in the last couple of weeks that there's a core of players at Huddersfield Town who are very promising, and Lewis O'Brien, Harry Toffolo, and Josh Koroma are three of them. And last week, I said, Harry Toffolo, sign your bloody contract, Harry Toffolo, and it looks like he's got one now. And if he doesn't sign it, I'm gonna call him out again. So not that that'll do anything, but he's but for me, if Phil manages to, he's got rid of Bakuna and Benza, who we'll talk about in a moment. Well, not got rid of, but they've left. And if we can use the money that would come in future for Bakuna for the contracts of Lewis O'Brien, Harry Toffel, and Josh Koroma to give them some to sort of give Huddersfield Town some time with them, if you like, and it just all of a sudden things look a little bit more settled as well, and the side looks a bit more settled. And for me, it's a really good platform from the club to build forward as well, and it also guarantees that we're not going to lose these guys for nothing, and and we can start to plan properly. So for me, one of the exciting parts of that was the potential that Lewis, and from what I hear, Lewis is pretty close to agreeing that. I think once that first domino goes, the other dominoes in the squad will go as well. And for me, that would be fantastic news and to coin Mel Booth, whose retirement party tonight. So bless you, Mel Booth, as well, if you ever listen to this, and good luck in your retirement. But it would be a fillip, wouldn't it, Pozza, for Huddersfield, or a boon? That was his other one for Huddersfield if we got those three guys signed down. I'll stop waffling now and I'll let you talk.
Yeah, I think obviously getting O'Brien tied down, he's got an option this year, and so potentially we can trigger that, and it's another 12 months. But if you can tie him down onto, we'll have a 3-year deal at a Town, don't we? So he's got to
10.
be getting at least 3. But yeah, I suppose it guarantees that if someone does come in for him, they will have to sort of pay what we value him, and if he don't, then he's playing for Town, and he's a string in our bow. So I think either way it works well. It can only be a good thing.
And that left side as well. That left side with I think independent observers as well, the second tier podcast. You look at that left hand side, Simon, of Toffolo, O'Brien, and Koroma, and that's up there with some of the best. That combination's up there with some of the best in this league. Obviously, Fulham and West Brom are on a different level, but after that, that's a really good combination. And I'll tell you what, I'm very interested to see how Pippa lines back up, with Sorba Thomas on that right flank as well. And I think there's some really, really promising combinations to be had there as well. And you can just see that sort of forming together nicely. I know we're getting slightly off track here, but it does excite me in the future if these guys sign that contract. So.
Yeah, I completely agree. Certainly hopes. I think we saw glimpses, certainly last season, and a little bit this season as well, down that left-hand side, as you mentioned, of kind of Toffolo overlapping and Lewis O'Brien threading balls through to Koroma and such. So not sure what much else there is to say, really, other than that kind of we hope we tie them down on kind of 3-4 year deals. And like you say, then mix as a much more appealing club to anyone kind of coming in next summer and that kind of beyond there, really.
Right, let's whiz through a couple of these because I've realised we've spent too long talking about Stoke if we want to hit the magic 60 minutes on this podcast. Bakuna and Mwapsa, Mbenza as he's known elsewhere, is the next one. So Bakuna went for nothing, essentially, but we have a big sell-on clause and payments are due to kick in next year as well, which means Town will get their money back. I believe we paid 2 million to Groningen for Bakuna, so at least 2 million will be coming back, potentially more, which is fair. I don't think we expected any more than that. And Benza, I believe the club that was bidding for him was Olympiacos. I think we can work that out slightly. If it's not, apologies. But 3.5 million and another 500,000 in clauses, other clauses. And Benza wanted to wait a 40% pay increase. I thought that'd be right up in Benza's street, if I'm honest. 5 other clubs, including, I think Besiktas were mentioned at some point. Trabzonspor, they were mentioned. It seems like he's held the club to ransom a little bit, doesn't it? And he's played the game. Him and his agent have absolutely played the game perfectly from their point of view, and they've come to the end of the window and said, right, we're not going anywhere unless you release us, and the transfer fee you would have had is now going to go to my agent, and I'm going to go retire from professional football and sit in Qatar and sipping, non-alcoholic daiquiris on sprawled across the front of a Lamborghini on Instagram like he likes to do. That seems to be the Mbenza thing, doesn't it?
It's a shame, really, because there was kind of a point, albeit a very brief point, last season where you thought, actually, there is a football player here who wants to be here, and you saw glimpses of why he potentially commanded it at a really high fee. But you now think that was a big facade, and lo and behold, we're back where we actually always thought we would be with Mbenza. I think the question for me was Phil right to kind of take up the options on both Bakuna and Mbenza's contract to try and secure the club some money? In the case of Bakuna, it looks like it was the right decision. And actually, by triggering that extension, we've now got a better deal than what we would have done had we just released him. For Mbenza, it's probably the contrary, in that we've probably paid out a few more weeks' wages than what we would have wanted to. But I think kind of Phil's probably sat here now thinking, he's gone. I didn't sign him. Let's draw a line under it and I'll move on. And I think as fans, we're all thinking that as well, because I think we've all wasted too much time on Benza, and we'll probably want to talk about something a bit more productive.
Someone wasted too much time on that tandem bike as well, didn't they, back in the day, Pozza, you'll remember. Yeah. But yeah, apparently, I think from what I heard, we haven't had to pay out his full contract, but we've just paid a couple of months at the start, which is probably 150 grand or something, which still grates a little bit. But, you know, it is what it is. He's gone. Thankfully,
in football, like a really weird business to be in, though, for a man who's like literally done nothing and underperformed for pretty much 2.5 years, if you give him a good 6 months here and there added together, can still command a fee, you know, still attract a bid of £3.5 million and a 40% pay increase. And God, you know what I mean? I wish I were a footballer, obviously, but, you know, if I were that bad at my job, no way would somebody want to give me an increase to move on. It's absolutely unbelievable. Yeah. And I think Benza is just a disgrace, to be honest. The way that he's conducted himself, and the fact that he basically sprung the club along, you know, with the £3.5 million. And I think that's probably the most annoying thing when we give him that contract. I know it will have been a fine line between, you know, giving him the contract so we'd get some money and, you know, potentially letting him leave for no. But sometimes you've just got to take the hit, haven't you, and just get rid of him and get him out and almost make a stand and say, look, we're not prepared to be bent over by you anymore. Get out and see you later.
I think at the end of the day, I think they were probably right taking the risk. They've rolled the dice, and, you know, it's worked in Bakuna's case, not in Benza.
They've won one and lost one, haven't they, I suppose? So they're probably in time even each other.
I think it's been a fair effort, to be honest.
There's not of that Premier League era now, the majority, if not all, perhaps with the exception of Hogg, have left the club. I think you would say you wish the majority of them well, and that kind of they served Huddersfield Town well. Some performed better than others, some probably put a bit more effort than others, but by and large, you kind of think most of them gave their all in Huddersfield Town shirt and wanted the best for the club. And
Benza can get fucked. So there you go.
Yeah.
Simple as that. I won't lose any sleep over Benza. It's like David Wagner. You know, I keep looking to see how he's getting on in the wanked off stadium. It's what it's called, and you know, he's doing really well, taking, you know, young boys into the Champions League. It's great. You know, me and a mate even thought, you know, if they get to Man City, who don't sell all the tickets, we might even go and watch them. You know, and see how they get on. But they got Man United, so no chance. But yeah, you're right, Si. I think the majority of players you would say, do you know what? Fair enough. Wish you well. Zanka's gone to Brentford, hasn't he? So that's a strange one, because Zanka seems such a great guy first season, and then second season something strange happened there, and I think that would be really interesting. Well, I'm not going to delay on this too much, but it'd be really interesting to sort of speak to him and say what actually happened that second season, and I think it might be quite interesting. But Carlos,
you sense a lot of the blame will be pointed at Sievert's door.
Maybe, but I think it started a bit before. But yeah, Carlos, Phil, quite happy to see Carlos doing well, full of belief in him. Describes him as a fantastic coach, doesn't he? Always has. He's always had unwavering belief in his ability, hasn't he? It's nice to hear his support. He did only say.
All I say there, Matt, is what else do you expect him to say?
Well, when we interviewed him, mate, when we interviewed him that time, when after Danny Cowley, he refused point blank to say anything nice about them, and that's when you thought, oh, okay, maybe there's something happening here. But, you know, he was unwavering in the support for Carlos, even when things were bad, but he did actually temper that by saying there's only 5 or 10% season of the season, 5 to 10% of the season gone. So, you know, let's not go overboard. And he did sort of say he did sort of steer away from any "I told you so's" and stuff like that, which I thought was quite a nice section, really. Expectations
quite well timed, though, wasn't it? I know. Yeah. Obviously, he said he was going to do it after window shut, and it did shut at the time. It shut, and we just come off back of a 4-0 and a good performance of Everton.
I think he'd say the same thing after Stoke, to be honest.
I think, yeah. No, I'm not suggesting that, you know, he planned it to come out at that exact time, because he did say I'd do it after window shut. But it would have been interesting if we hadn't.
If we'd have lost them all.
The general consensus, what I've seen has been a good reaction to the interview. And I'm not saying Phil has changed what he said. I mean, like, the reaction to what he said might have been a little bit different.
Yeah, fair enough.
If we'd have lost.
Everything's dictated by results.
Of course it is, yeah. Like Si says, what's he going to do and come out? He's not going to come out and say, well, you know, I'm not quite sure. He was a bit crap last season. Let's see how he goes. He's going to.
Like I say, he did under Jan and the Cowleys, so, you know, you never know. But yeah, so expectations. He never really gives a figure, does he, on expectations? We've heard this before, where he never really sets any targets. He's just said we're expecting a significant improvement on the last 3 seasons, which
February.
Couldn't get much worse. Yeah, he said by February the 1st. Yeah, he said by February the 1st, but there's only like a couple of months left then. It's a bit of a cop-out, that, isn't it? But yeah, so Tommy Doyle as well, that was a player that was all set to come to us, midfielder. Agreed with Man City, left it to Lee, got on a plane, Lee Bromby, and then his agent took him to Hamburg, which Man City weren't aware of. I thought that sounded a bit odd, from Man City. Why that Man City weren't aware of it? I thought that was a bit odd. Would have been nice. Would have been nice to have
to sign where he goes.
Yeah, I thought that was a bit strange, but it was either really bad. If the agent's done that and said, right, we're in Hamburg now, you either let him go here or he's not going anywhere, then you never deal with that agent again, do you? Or you are aware and you just don't admit to it. So, but maybe there was a bit of cloak and dagger by Man City, who knows? It would have been nice. Yeah, football, isn't it? It's just such a shithouse business, isn't it? There's people all over. But yeah, it would have been nice, wouldn't it, Poz, if we'd have got another midfielder. But are we desperate for one? In the 3-4-3, probably not. If we go back to, 4-3-3, 3-5-2, maybe it becomes a bit more pertinent.
Yeah, it sort of depends on what formation we're looking to play, doesn't it, as to whether we're short in midfield. So yeah, one, again, is that a soundbite to keep fans happy, to say, look, we were going to get this guy, but we didn't. You don't know, do you? And you're never going to get the ask Man City, and they could tell you a totally different story, and you ask agent, and they'll probably tell you a totally different story. So it's,
Yeah, of course.
Shades of grey on that one, I'd imagine. But again, if we were in for him, fair enough.
Just shows the intent, I guess. Paying Dean off is mentioned as well. He wants to. I think he said he wanted to pay Dean off by Christmas or over the next few months or something. I think he said, if possible, having a debt-free club will be massive, because that debt is. I don't want to delay this, and we shouldn't talk about the details of the debt for obvious reasons at the minute, but it would be huge, wouldn't it, really, to get that off of the club. It is sort of a dark cloud which hangs over the decisions the club can make at the minute. So to get rid of that would be huge. And if he managed to do that before Christmas, you would actually have to say, fair play, Phil. Depending on how he did it, obviously, you would probably have to say, do you know what, fair play, let's crack on. And I think that would only be good for the club to get rid of that and move on as debt-free as possible.
I think that is probably the sort of, like you say, the dark cloud over it. It's like the thing that's always there in back of minds of both fans and probably Phil as well, that every decision that he makes, that is still in his mind. So if he can get rid of it, as you say, just depends on how he does that. If he pays off Dean and, transfers the debt to him, we're debt-free, but we're debt-free.
Still owed it to
debt, but to somebody, I'd rather owe it to Phil than Dean, because, Dean's taken out and Phil might let it sit there for 5 years, as Dean did before. So, again, if he pays it out of his own pocket, you've got to say.
He does mention that, actually, doesn't he? He does say if we can't afford to pay Dean off by transfers.
The football club owes money to Dean, and if we don't generate enough revenue for the football club, I'll be able to pay it, then that's my job to cover it. So that's what'll happen. So and that's talking about the February payment that's due to him. So
I thought the putting money in bit was quite interesting. He goes on about putting money into the club. He does say, I think this is what, as fans, we always want a big philanthropist to come in and throw millions at the club and never ask for it back. It's probably not very realistic, is it? But this is what we dream of, isn't it, as a football fan? But what he said was quite interesting and made a lot of sense, that the money he does put in is usually via sponsorship. I think that has different tax implications, doesn't it, for a business, etc. So it's probably easier to do that to a certain level, but you can't put silly amounts in, because the FFP will call you on it. And I think there's a fair value scheme as well, whereby you can't just say, I'm going to sponsor the shirt for 100 million quid. You can't do that. Football clubs get called on. Man City tried to do that with the stadium, didn't they? With the Etihad Stadium, and tried to circumvent it that way.
The old taxi firm and stuff like that.
Yeah, crazy taxi. But yeah, so there's not. But it was interesting to say that he'd done that, and he'd rather do that, but he doesn't want. He also says that he never rules out lending the club money as a loan, but he wants to try and avoid it, and he wants to try and put money in where he can, which I think was quite interesting. And he also.
You probably going to mention, but linked to that was the whole. How do we, as a club, generate more income and more revenue streams? Some of the things he spoke around in terms of kind of developments of the stadium and such, you probably want to go on to mention now, so I won't say too much. I thought was kind of quite interesting, actually, and it demonstrated kind of a medium to long-term plan in terms of
I saved it for last side, the best for last.
Forgive me, I jumped too early.
It's all right. You go for it, mate. But it's really interesting, isn't it? What stood out for you as been the most interesting from it?
I just felt that it was quite evident. I mean, there's obviously conversations been ongoing for quite a while now around the ownership of the stadium and kind of where that sits going forward and the kind of the change of structure there. But kind of there was then evidence of a clear plan in terms of the loan that would be taken from that trust, how that would be utilised within the stadium to improve revenue streams in terms of the hospitality areas, conference centres and such.
I'd be interested to know that about that loan, from the trust and who the trust is, because I didn't quite get that from the interview. But that might be interesting to know later on.
Yeah, no, that's true. I mean, and there's also a question in terms of obviously Huddersfield Town will become, or the Huddersfield Giants will rent essentially the stadium off the club, and very much unlikely it will be disclosed, but what are the terms of that rent and all that sort of stuff is just quite interesting. But we talk about kind of having kind of conference facilities, ultimately depending on how much and how frequently they'll be utilised and all that sort of stuff actually could be quite lucrative. And then there was mentioned obviously kind of hosting more concerts and that sort of thing, which suddenly you start to think actually all that could be quite beneficial and make the club much more sustainable in the long term. I think Phil, in the interviews you used quite a broad spectrum, but somewhere between 2 and 5 million per annum in terms of additional revenue that's generated. And
if you look at Brighton and Hove Albion, what they do something very similar. Ask David Hartrick about this, and he'll quite happily talk about, I think it's Paul Barber, the guy there that's in charge of all that, and they pretty much have fans in, like Phil says, that he was on about having fans in from 11 a.m. till 11 p.m. But this is what Brighton do. They put live music on in the stadium. They get people spending money in the stadium, not just during the game, but way before and way after. And they also have it working 7 days a week. So Brighton is actually a really good blueprint to follow. And it seems to be they've got something. The only thing I think the stadium's probably missing at the minute, when, I don't know about everyone else, but when my company do these conferences and go away, they always want to do they'll go somewhere where they can do an event of sorts as well. So just off the top of my head, we went to the Williams factory in Oxford, and they'll take you, you have a tour around the Williams factory and Nigel Mansell's old F1 car and stuff like that. Or they'll go to Silverstone and you go around the track. So there's always an event, and I think Huddersfield probably lacks maybe something to do alongside.
You've got Hollywood Bowl, Matt, down the road.
Yeah, there's the Hollywood Bowl, of course, and McDonald's and what have you.
Yeah, they could reopen Ricky's strip back, couldn't they? Really wanted.
Oh, topless barmaids at 3 p.m. That's what everyone wants, isn't it? But yeah, I look at the water there and I just think maybe there's something they could do with, the sort of, in terms of canoeing, kayaking, that's not been done around West Yorkshire before, whereby maybe they could do, like a 2-in-1 sort of thing. But that was the only thing.
Cable cars up and running, could have a trip up to Vulcan and have a couple of pints on that.
That's what Cozzy said, didn't he? Once he
all the delights
cable car to Vulcan.
I'm sure they'll come flocking.
Yeah.
But no, it is good because it does show that forward thinking ambition, and I think the hotel will be a big pull because if you're having a 2-day event, for example, you can just stay at the hotel now, whereas before you'd have to find somewhere, and there's not an abundance of places in Huddersfield that are like that and can cater for that. So yeah, it shows the ambition, it shows the sort of the forward thinking. I'm not quite sure about the 11 till 11. I think Brighton are quite unique in that their stadium is.
It's a bit more of an affluent area as well, isn't it, Brighton?
And people will probably go down and spend 10 quid on a pizza, whereas we're too tight to spend 250 on a pie. So it'd be interesting to see how that works out. But yeah, you can't fault the vision and you can't fault the ambition. One thing it does as well, though, for me is the one thing that I took of that is originally I maybe had concerns that Phil's plan was to get us debt free and then maybe move us on, but from that, it seems like this is an ongoing project for him, and he'll stick around. It
was nice to see that there's a plan. I think that was the main thing. You just look at it and think, right, there's a plan, with the football club, and you can see a plan. Because for ages, we've, me and sort of some friends, I know people find commercials really boring, don't they? Cozzy's like, straight away, he's like, I don't want to talk about this commercial nonsense. But it's so important to a football club, and it genuinely is. And when he said this will improve 2 to 5 million. Great. That means, and he's pretty much said that means you don't have to sell a player that year if it's good. And it's stuff like that is what you want to hear, isn't it? As a fan, that's how it works. You go and you enjoy these events and you spend money, and then Lewis O'Brien stays for another 3 years. That's sort of how it works, and that's how it should work. And it's really interesting. So I'll run over just very quickly the points I've made on it. So just for anybody that's not aware and hasn't listened to the interview. He mentions there's a stumbling block about HD1, didn't go into it in too much detail. Mediation should sort that out. So the deal should be concluded by the end of the year. That will be when I say we, means the Football Club Huddersfield Town will run the stadium. The football club will run the stadium. The stadium will be put into a trust. The football club will have a 25-year running lease. The Giants become a tenant and pay rent. The trust will give us 10 to 12 million, which will be invested in the stadium. A lot of it in upkeep, and he mentions the upkeep will cost a couple of million, and they're wanting to expand the corporate areas, creating a tunnel club. You know, Man City and Tottenham have really popular tunnel clubs. I can't imagine ours will look too similar to the tunnel clubs that there, because they are spectacular. But he wants to create a tunnel club, which he mentioned could be done during the season, which is interesting because they're moving people from the offices there elsewhere in the stadium. 3 different corporate lounges rather than the boxes in the FM stand, which will then host 1,000 people for conferencing and functions. And they're trying to make it, like Simon says, a place to try and generate revenue during the week as well as at the weekend for football. And fan bars as well. He's on about creating these fan bars, and they want to be open for, like I say, a lot longer before and after. The question is, though, as a Huddersfield fan who's not used to this, would you spend time at the ground when there's no football game on? Because I'm not used to that. I rock up at 5 to 3 and I go straight away. Pozza, you hang around for a little bit, don't you, with Jack to try and get some photos every now and then? But would something like this, are you more likely to be the target of this than, well, maybe I am as well. Maybe I'll hang around. But as a football fan, do you think it's a good idea?
I think it's certainly going to be marketed at more like your family sort of atmosphere rather than, your young lads sort of grouping together. So, if I can get down there and have a bit of scran with me boys.
Five Guys. I'm still waiting for Five Guys to be built on HD1, mate.
It depends what they've done. It depends what goes there, doesn't it? And what you're after. You've got your football fans in. Certainly, you're not going to be like you've talked about Man City and Tottenham. They can put on a 5-course banquet before, and people will pay £1,000 to do it. That's not going to happen.
Different level, yeah.
To be honest. So they've got to pitch it right. They can't be too ambitious and price people out. They've got to, you've got to, beer and a burger is probably the more, than bloody lobster and squid or whatever that they have at Emirates or something like that. So it'll all depend on how the market, and they talk a lot about corporate, but they've got to be catering for, the likes of us, the fan on the street, and they've got to have outlets for everybody. Otherwise, it won't work. But again, it's one of those. Let's see how it pans out. 2 or 3 years time. Let's see how they go. And
well, said they're going to consult
for dreaming and hoping that it can happen. So,
so they're going to consult the fan groups. He said so. Hopefully, that will come to fruition. Yeah.
I think if I start drinking at 11 a.m. If I start drinking at 11 a.m, I don't think I'll make kickoff. So that'll be my issue. Look, direction is. I think for me, it's a good idea. Do I see myself being there at 11 p.m. at night? Probably not. But would I be up for kind of hanging around for 2 or 3 pints afterwards to 7, 8 o'clock? Then yeah, definitely. So kind of look forward to seeing what it looks like. Probably seeing a bit more detail on the plans.
Yeah, I'd love to see some plans. Like they usually send out a video, don't they? Like a like they did with Canal Side before it was built. They sent what do you call it? No, not a 45-minute video, but just sort of like a fly through, like how it will look like. I think that'd be quite interesting to see. Those drone fly throughs are massive at the minute, so maybe a virtual.
No offense if you listen, Mark, but I don't think I can spend another 60 minutes listening to you to talk about how water's going to get transferred.
Oh mate, at least he didn't have to put his mask on outside now, so that's one plus for him. So.
Bless him. I was just going to say, I know we're trying to keep it under the 60 minutes. I don't know.
That's gone, mate. 60. We're on 60 odd. Yeah, it's gone.
I'll keep it short though. But right at the very start of the interview, I thought it was good that sort of Phil maybe he sort of put his hands up and acknowledged his previous mistakes. When he came into the club, he was obviously excited, and he probably did let a few of his ideas and his mouth run away with him a little bit, and he's probably had a chance to fully assess the state of the club now and what needs to be done. And I thought that was quite big of him, because to me personally, he always came across as a person who maybe wouldn't do that sort of thing. And it just showed that he's learning, and he gets a lot of stick from fans, and with Ive on here personally sort of called him out for stuff, and it's nice to see that now he's showing a little bit more humility maybe, and it shows that he's learning as he goes, and people are maybe starting to, or me personally, maybe like warm to him a little bit more. So from my opinion, from my point of view, fair play to him for saying that and stuff. So
I thought it was a good interview.
Maybe give him a little bit of slack for the rest of this season and see where we end up.
That's like I say, it'll be dictated by what happens on the pitch, won't it? But I think if things,
everything is.
if things go okay on the pitch and we
95% of
finish middling, if we're decent or we finish mid-table, then people will say what a great chairman and what a good job he's doing. It's just the way it goes, isn't it? It's everything's dictated by on the pitch. So hopefully the results go well and we'll it'll buy him some breathing space, because I do everyone wants the best for Phil at the club, because we all benefit, if things go well. So good luck, Phil, with what's happening, and hopefully everything goes as you want, because he's had a rough ride, hasn't he, with everything so far with COVID, and it's not been easy, and I don't think he quite fully got what he was getting. I think what he maybe expected he was buying probably wasn't quite what it was when he got there. So, and he covers that in the interview, doesn't he? So, but maybe he's got his eyes open all around him now, and everything's good. So yeah, good interview. Good luck, Phil. The last real thing is he said we put 7-figure offers in for a midfielder and Mipo, who we've got on loan as well, which was interesting. I don't think that means necessarily that cash is flush at Huddersfield Town, but it was good to see that we're potentially looking at spending decent amounts on players, because I think that's been a criticism, hasn't it, that we've not been spending a lot of money. The midfielder, I think there was the guy at MK Dons was linked, and it was potentially that guy. I think it's David Kasumu, is it, from MK Dons? He was linked strongly on around deadline day, so potentially it could have been him and Mipo. And it's good that we're looking at these young players as well, Poz, because Sorba Thomas, I think people were kind of, with the recruitment team gets a lot of stick, and rightly, when you look at Diakabi and Benza and whatnot, and maybe rightly, who knows? We never know the full story. But you're starting to look now at your Josh Karomas, Toffolo, okay, is the Cowleys, wasn't he? But you're looking at Josh Karoma, Sorba Thomas, and hopefully Danny Grant comes through, etc. And Pippa, and you're thinking, do you know what? And Pippa, believe it or not, was a recruitment team signing. It didn't come from one of the Spanish guys, Chicho or Jorge, Jorge. It was a recruitment team one. So credit where credit's due. They are pulling some decent signings out now, and I think fans like us are getting more confidence back in the club buying players than maybe what they were. So, being linked with these young players is quite exciting. I think I skated around that quite well there. Yeah,
it's one of them. And again, with transfers, you're not going to win them all. You win some, you lose some. I think the main thing that annoyed everybody with previous recruitment that's not worked out is the money that was spent on them more than what else. If you pay 500,000 for Mbenza, nobody's as bothered as what they are. But because you spend,
value for money. It's Yorkshire, mate. Value for money. That's what we're about. That's what we're about.
Yeah. So let's hope it that trend continues. But you've got to weigh that up. Even though if you look at the current squad, we've brought Dwayne Holmes in, we've brought Danny Ward in, we've brought in Jordan Rhodes, who haven't really done the right lot. So for every one that's good, there's always going to be one that's bad, and that's just
I'm willing to give those guys time. I know Danny Ward and Dwayne haven't quite. I'm trying to find the right words. They haven't set light to the place yet, have they yet? But I'm going to give them a little bit more time, I think, before I completely write them off.
Well, they've got a 3-year deal, so there's plenty of time for that.
Yeah, plenty of time to be written off. Yeah, there you go. But yeah, there's like the local guys, and you want them to do well, don't you? Because, like I say, it always benefits us. It's just it is frustrating, isn't it? And I don't think they're not Mbenza situations whereby they're happy to just sort of sit and do nothing for the money. The guys do want to play and do want to work hard at. They're just circumstance or otherwise is just not showing them in the best. And to be fair to Dwayne, he's not played in his proper position yet in more than 2 games in a row. So yeah, there you go. So, but I think that's all I've got really for this week. Have you guys got any other business that you want to throw in there? Anyone you want to call out? Pause? Any whoppers or anything?
No, mate, not this.
Benza?
No, it's getting late. Bedtime soon. So we'll leave it as that, mate.
Yeah. So thanks to everybody for listening. Thank you. Get in touch with the Football Forum. We will try and make the show live again at some point. It's down to me at the minute. Is that I've got to buy a new laptop essentially to do all that stuff. So leave that with me, and hopefully we'll be back as soon as possible. And Blackpool, I don't think we're managing to get a preview show out for Blackpool. So why don't we do some predictions just to finish the show? How do you reckon we're going to get on at Blackpool, Simon?
Had you asked me before Saturday, I was confident of a 2-0 win, but only because they beat Fulham, and now think slightly differently. 1-1.
I'm going 1-1 as well, Poz. Are you going to make it a hat-trick, or do you fancy something else?
Oh, I'm going to say, I think, I know this is going to sound really stupid, but if we're playing Blackpool on a Saturday, I'd be a little bit more confident in going for a win. I have this weird thing about midweek away games that we just don't win. But But yeah, looking at Blackpool, you can't say I'd go and expect us to win because we're not at that level yet. But I'd take a draw. I'll go with 2-2 rather than 1-1 just to be different.
Just to be different.
4-1 would be nice, and 4,000 Town fans there. That was I don't know if you remember, Si, but Poz, you might remember 94-95, this very first game of the season, the sun baking down. Neil Warnock's side, Town went there. Ronnie Jepson got 2, and Paul Reed, I think, got the other. Paul Reed get 2 as well. And
I think it did.
Yeah, and that really kicked off a really sort of brilliant campaign, and that's probably one really memorable game. Not so much Brian Potter on the scooter, on the when the game got called off, but the 4-1 there was, a real standout game from Blackpool. But yes, I think that's it for this week. So Cozzy, hopefully, if he's not had too many pints, will bring you some live post-match reaction from Blackpool. And here's to Cozzy staying sober enough to deliver that for you guys, and all the best. And we'll be back next Monday morning.
There's a team that is dear to its followers. The colours are bright blue and white. They're a team of renown, and they're the pride of the town. And the game of football is their delight. And all the while upon the field of play, thousands loudly cheer them on the way. Often you can hear them say, who can beat the town today? And then the bells will ring so merrily, and every goal shall be a memory. So Town, play up and bring that cup back to Huddersfield. So Town, play up and bring the cup back to Huddersfield.